Welcome to the Globetrottin ADs. This podcast is for you, athletic directors, activity coordinators, coaches, and program associates based in international schools around the world. The Globetrottin ADs is proudly hosted by Nick DeForest from the American International School Vienna and Matt Fleming from the American International School of Budapest. Here they are now, Nick and Matt and the Globetrottin ADs.
Sports fans, welcome to this episode of the Globetrottin ADs. Today we're glad to have Mike DeNeef, is the athletic director at AISD Dhaka in Bangladesh, originally from Saskatchewan, Canada. We're glad to have Mike with us today and give us some insight about the situation in Asia and how they're working through wellness and some other topics that we'll discuss today. So welcome to Mike, and what's up, Nick?
Hey, Matt, thanks for the intro, and Mike, thanks for being here. Mike, before we ask you to give us a bit more of a background about yourself and your school, we definitely have to mention that you were the champion of the conference attendees back in April. You were on from early to late, and it was just great to get you more, get to know you more in person through the conference, and it was really amazing how that all worked out, and we continued to build this community online through that conference, and it was great, and I appreciate you hanging on and being there through thick and thin of time zones and everything, and it's great to have you on the podcast now. So welcome.
Thank you very much. It's interesting you bring that up, because that's kind of this pandemic thing it's really in some ways broadened the outreach for the athletic directors. We're getting to talk to a lot of people we don't usually have in our tight little circle. So that was awesome. The summer, the conferences, and in the spring, it was great stuff. So thanks for having me. I love listening to you guys, as you know. Love what you guys are doing with the podcast. This is just a crazy time for everybody everywhere, but especially our profession. And at the best of times, it's a solitary kind of thing. And the part that you guys are doing with the Globetrottin ADs, really through the podcast, the conferences, the website, you've been a rock for all of us through this. So I want to thank you for that before we move on anywhere else.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate that. Well, it's been great because of the connections we've made, and this network has grown and expanded. And it's just so nice to have these, all these colleagues everywhere and all these resources we can reach out to for all kinds of stuff.
Cool. So tell us, tell us about your school. Tell us about you. Give us a bit more of a background, please.
My story. It's not an exciting. It's a small town kid from Canada. I appreciate this shout out to Saskatchewan, and I do act like I come from there now, but that's actually where my wife is from.
Uh-oh.
And
okay.
So we go back there all the time, and that's where we're based out of. But I would be remiss if somebody back home heard this and I didn't shout out that I come from British Columbia. That's where I grew up. That's where I was born. Went to college at Kamloops, big hockey town. So you guys might know that a little bit. Shout out to Caribou College, where I played some college basketball for a little while. Moved on to the University of Victoria. Got my degree in humanities, education, PE. Graduated, like all of us, with a boatload of debt. Really tough local hiring market in BC when I graduated. And I was a couple years into a really good relationship with a rock star woman. And so we decided that moving overseas would fill a lot of our check marks in terms of making some money, paying off some debt, figuring out, we figured that if we move overseas and we can survive together, well, then we're in it for the long haul. And it turned out to be true, which was awesome. And so we headed off to Korea and did 3 years in Korea, 95 to 98, language schools there, just trying to pay off debt. Moved to Taiwan, sticking with language schools, and then ended up in the international school circuit. It's kind of like one of those shoulder times where you had to figure out, am I going back home or am I going to get into what I really love and want to do? So ended up at Kaohsiung American School, spent 4 years there, and dabbled in administration there. I was the secondary school coordinator for a little while and realized that I really liked the athletic organization way better. So backed off of that, took that out of the life plan. Moved on to, one thing about, I wanted to put the shout out for this. Taiwan had the best athletic conference acronym. I can't remember what it stood for, but the acronym was TEAMS. TEAMS. There was Taiwan, it was expatriate, there was an athletic in there, but and it's gone now. I tried to look it up online. They switched the name to TISA now or something. So the old timers will remember that. Moved to what I consider one of the best cities in the world, Shanghai, and had an awesome time there. Shanghai, you guys probably have heard this through some of the people you know, like the city itself has over 30 international schools in it. So it's one of the most robust city leagues that you could be involved with some great people, really people that I look up to in the profession and who've really helped me out and who I've enjoyed learning from and having conversations with. 11 years there, I think. No, 8 years in Shanghai. And then we came to Dhaka. And this is a different experience, equally gratifying, but different again.
Yeah. Well, where you are in Dhaka right now is kind of where we're going with this this episode. And
you're coming to Dhaka?
No, well, I wish. That would be great. That would be great.
There.
You are coming to Dhaka, Nick. You're just going to be coming virtually. You're already booked already.
That's right. I am. Book my ticket November 21st.
That's right.
But yeah, you're in South Asia. You have SAISA, not as cool of an acronym. You haven't gone back to school. You're still virtual. So tell us a little bit about how AIS Dhaka started and what you're up to right now. Yeah,
so we hit I consider myself very fortunate. It's one of the things in the pandemic I've learned to be a lot better at is gratitude. I think all of us have figured out that that's kind of the way to get through this. But we were able to squeeze in our second season right before we shut everything down. It was probably the most, we always have a million plates in the air that we're spinning, but trying to get that last season tournament in was probably the most skilled bit of work we probably did as a group that I think we ever did. And we did it in a safe way. It was, we were making sure we checked all the boxes and got everybody there and back. But as soon as they got back, everything shut down. We closed everything down. We were heading into our break like a lot of people, and the school basically said, you can leave for break. We're not sure what's going to happen. We think we'll be virtual for a few weeks when we get back. And then, and then we'll go from there. So the people who left and went home at break never came back that semester.
When was that? Was that April, March?
That would have been March. It was our March break. A little bit earlier than some. And then so about, I think, 50 to 60% of people were out of the country. And then 40% of us were still in country. So, of course, we were virtual all the rest of that semester. My family stayed here. My son, as we've talked about, he was a junior last year, or not a junior, sophomore. What do you guys call that? Grade 11. So he wanted to stay and do work here because, as you know, we have a cabin up in Canada. And although it's great for kayaking, it's not so great for internet. So we thought we'd stick around somewhere where the internet was good. And we caught the last Canadian expatriate flight out of the country before it was, they did 4 of them. And from 2 on, they promised that it was the last one. And so we believed them on the 4th one, and it was the last one. Wow. And then, so that brought us through summer, coming back up here. And the goal of the school, they brought everybody back. They didn't want anybody overseas. We tried to do the virtual thing with people in different time zones. Everybody was heroic. Everybody did the best they could. But it's, as you guys know, it's not a winning game. It's a tough game just to survive. Yeah. So they wanted to bring everybody back. So that was a process. I think if we were the last flight out of Dhaka, I think we were one of the first flights where where the airlines were figuring out how to put people on planes and move them back to different places. So like when I showed up at the airport, it was the first time Qatar Airways had used like the face shield. And they didn't even know how it was supposed to be used. They're just like handing them out going, we have to do this now. And so so we ended up over a span of like 3 weeks, I think, ended up getting everybody back, but we've been virtual since then.
Wow. And what was that like finishing and then starting the year virtual? Because I know for us in Europe,
Depressing.
Yeah, right? I mean, to start the year virtual, all the community building, that goes on in our schools at the beginning.
So so give a shout out to our Rockstar Middle School principal. She did an amazing job with the teacher induction, the new teachers coming in. Mm-hmm. So we basically did their induction while they were in quarantine. Okay. And so we had we sent packages to them every day that had different kinds of fun things in them to do. We had virtual dinners with them every night. The leadership team picked two different, I'm the activities organizer, right? So basically with 5 minutes to go, they go, oh yeah, Mike, you got to put together like a rotation schedule so that everybody gets to see everybody at the dinners and we get all this. So it was fine. We missed a few. I explained to them the scheduling quirks and how it can't work out perfectly with odd numbers of people. But so we did a really good job bringing them back. But I think we fell down a little bit because we put so much energy into them. We forgot about everybody else coming back. Just kind of made an assumption that they'd be okay.
Yeah.
And you figured out down the line they weren't. Like we should have done more. It should have been about bringing the whole school together, getting that whole school kind of feeling back.
Right.
So that was tough. And so, and then.
So all your staff are in DACA now?
Yes, all staff are in DACA. Staff has the choice to come to school or not. Okay. So they can do their virtual teaching from home or they can do it from school. We tested all of our staff twice now. Both times we've had like a half dozen or so positive cases.
Wow.
That didn't affect, because we're virtual, they didn't have many contacts, so it didn't really have a knock-on effect too much. Mm-hmm. But it's, so our area of the world is I think the highest rate of infection around. And I know Europe's going up again right now.
We're catching up, babe.
Yeah. But we've been like this for a long time, which is why we haven't gone back to bringing kids on campus yet. Right. We haven't, we didn't say we're going to be virtual till January. We've been going, we want to come back as soon as we can come back. Right. We've actually feel like we've put all the work in to make the campus ready, but the government still isn't allowing kids back in schools yet.
So are the kids everywhere then?
No. We have the percentages. I think we're up around over 70 or 80% are in DACA. Okay. So a lot of them did come back.
Well, we want to talk definitely about your school and what you're doing to fill your time, obviously with your virtual student athletes. A bit later, but what about the conference on a whole? Because everyone's in different countries, pretty varied in comparison to Europe. Briefly, what are the rest of the schools in your conference up to?
It's really, and this is one of those things we kind of touched on at the beginning, like the way that the ADs have come together. Mm-hmm. We started right at the beginning with, I think, as soon as we all shut down, because we were talking about, we all hoped that we'd be back up by April, right?
Yeah.
And we'd be able to run our tournament. So we were still in conversation then. And then once it realized this wasn't going to happen, we met weekly. Every week we got on a call. It wasn't an official call, but everybody showed up. And it was mostly a support network. It was mostly talking through different issues they were having around in different places. As you mentioned, we're a very diverse geographical organization. We go from Amman, Jordan, Muscat, Oman, 2 schools in India, a school in Nepal, a school in Sri Lanka, 3 schools in Pakistan, and then us here in Bangladesh. So we're all dealing with different levels of opening, not opening. Some have tried to go back hybrid and then have had to pull it back and go back to virtual, kind of like what's probably happening in Europe a little, or trending towards a little bit.
Yep.
Some just the Indian schools declared immediately we're out for the first semester. We're not going to be bringing people back on campus. The Pakistan schools are starting right now to try and come back in some kind of face-to-face format, but I haven't talked to them since they were just coming off their break and then they were going to try it. So we'll see where it goes. OSC in Sri Lanka probably has the best rate of infection. It's not really a big problem there for them. But every once in a while, they have a company that all of a sudden has an outbreak, and then they shut the schools down, and they get forced back into. And of course, they've all been dealing with, in this region, we've all been dealing with difficulties having teachers come back. So, you're partially staffed, and you've got a lot of local kids coming in. It's just been really tough on different ADs.
Well, with the loss and how, as you said, depressing, the start of the year is, I know you're doing some good stuff and trying to do the best thing for your student athletes, whether that's just in your school or in the conference. So tell us about this SAIS virtual conference that you guys are planning.
Yeah. So we've, as you guys I'm sure have done in Europe, we've put together, we must be on plan 50 by now of how we're going to adapt to whatever's happening. We still have hope against hope that we can come together at some point in the end of the year to have some kind of jamboree type situation where we play all the sports, not as a tournament, but just as a let's get back together thing.
Cool.
But absent of that, we started talking, and the biggest thing we feel our kids miss right now is just the ability to connect with the other kids from the other conferences. It's you guys know this from your conference or your tournaments. It's more about the kids getting together, and some of their best friends are people from other schools that they see 3 times a year at different tournaments.
Right.
Now with in the old days when they had time, virtually they'd be talking to each other leading up to tournaments, and there'd be these whole big kind of things. And now especially with all of our schools being mostly virtual, the kids are so busy, they don't even have the time to keep those connections up anymore. So they just they're really focused in on their things and not looking outward enough. And so we wanted to do something. We wanted to put something together that brought them together again. And so the first thing we're going to try and do is this a virtual conference, with the idea being that we bring in some guest speakers for our athletic kids to listen to. So in their interest area, have some workshops maybe. We put together some really kind of basic challenges that you've seen all over the globe, but we're going to try and not compete. We're just going to participate in them as a conference, and then do a celebration of the different things during the conference time. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it.
Cool. Is it going to run over the course of a couple of days, or just a one-day thing?
It's actually, we've narrowed it. It's just going to be the afternoon on one day. We've done it to about a 4-hour block, I think. Because it's just going to be, the celebration part is just going to be showing videos of the different, that we've put together, the kids doing different things. I'm going to put together a Kahoot that's kind of based on past history of things that have happened in SAISA that might be kind of under the radar stuff that kids might get a kick out of. The guest speakers, of course, will be the big part in terms of the learning part of it, and they'll be together in groups like that. We're thinking of putting an alumni panel together to kind of talk to the kids a little bit about the transitioning into university and moving on that way. So we think to be honest, Matt, we're still planning it as we go along, like everything else. So we'll see how it works out.
Like what I was talking about earlier, the Halloween contest or costume contest I got to announce today at school is just totally wrong it, but it worked out great. So I'm sure it'll be a success. And I just want to get back to that point you made about these kids making these connections with other kids from that conference. They might be at another international school. And it's such a valuable selling point for our programs, and it's just a big piece of what we do, because even my own kids, they've traveled for SAISA competitions, and they've got friends all over East Europe that they keep touch with. And it's we talked about that the other day at dinner, like just listing off names of kids they know. The 2 kids from Warsaw. My daughter has a buddy who's in Kiev, and they're bummed that they can't see him. It's just kind of like how we feel like I can't see Nick when I go to the our meetings, and the other guys who we established these over the years and established a relationship with. So, but if they can do it virtually, that's a great way for them to get together, connect, and keep those friendships alive for sure.
Yeah, there was a story I wanted to tell you guys about one of our recent graduates, last year's class of 2020, which, feels so bad for them and how it all ended up like they didn't even get their graduation here, like a lot of places. But she, one of my student athletes, traveled to, she ended up at McGill, and my daughter's at McGill. So they were supposed to be kind of looking after each other. But of course, Quebec in Canada is the worst place in Canada right now. So it's in lockdown. They've been in red since beginning of October, I think. And so the girl, the first year, is in a dorm, and they're apartment style, not a hotel style dorms that used to be doubles, but because of COVID, now they're only singles. And there was actually a case in her dorm. So she got actually just locked in, like she's not even allowed to leave. And, first year depression, like it's all already a mess, and moving away from home and no family around and not even actually getting to go to school. So it was a pretty tough time. And then they got a new flatmate in their building, got moved over from another dorm that basically they decided wasn't full enough. So they kind of consolidated in one so they can keep track of them better. And it was a girl from OSC, a SAISA girl, that she had no idea was going to be there.
Yeah.
Wasn't super good friends with them, but she was a 3-sport athlete. And so she's seen them for 4 years. She's been a 3-sport athlete, so 12 tournaments probably. And now she's got a best friend in her flat that has like changed her outlook entirely. And that's the kind of stuff, like to me, that's why we do what we do.
Yeah.
It's to give kids those opportunities to make those connections, have those moments, and carry those into their next phase of their life some way, somehow.
Or if anything, that skill set to be open-minded to meet new people and make new friendships with strangers and people you're not going to get to meet.
Sure.
Otherwise, besides going abroad,
right.
The skill set those kids develop and take with them is tremendous, and it's the perfect example of that.
That's what the conference, why we want to put the conference together. So for the group coming up, we can still keep developing those skill sets and keep developing those kinds of resiliency skills, probably.
Yeah, and that story, I'm sure it happens often with our kind of kids, and I say that at opening ceremonies, especially to middle school tournaments and middle school kids. Hey, get off your phones, talk to the other people, say hi, make notice of the other people that are competing, because one, they could be sitting beside you in class next year because we move so often, right? But they could also, you could also run into them at university or in your first job or later in life. And it happens so often that the international school community, you meet up, and then you get, oh yeah, that ISSD back in 2005 in Vienna was the best, and yeah, I can't believe it's amazing how, you need those in-person connections, right, to then maybe develop them later, whether it's online or in person somewhere else. So
yeah, that's kind of it keeps you going in this job, knowing that you're doing that kind of work.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they are. Our students are different. Their international school students are different, and that's like when we do these conferences and the podcast. I mean, there's lots of great resources out there, and a lot of it does apply, but not everything. Because we're just so different. So it's great to have people, like yourself, making this conference have different kind of resources available specifically for our kids. Because they need it. They're different. They can't compare it to some U.S. high school student, in many ways. Well, what have you been doing? You're an AD, but you don't have any teams right now. So what are you doing?
Well, that's not true. I just started my virtual ASAs last week, and
Perfect.
I have Team Tagger going on right now.
Awesome. Yeah.
One of my ASAs. Right. But that's kind of, I was just thinking through some stuff, getting ready for this, and just about how jealous I am of you guys that you actually have had kind of somewhat partial seasons and gatherings and activity actually happening on your site in whatever way, shape, or form you can get it done. Because we haven't had that at all. Right. So, our jobs, especially all the SAISA type athletic directors, our jobs are completely different these days.
Okay.
It's resulted in, and by necessity, a lot of it, some of it by worrying about what your job security is and making sure that you're actually still valuable to the school in some way, as when your activities aren't running. So I've seen everything from like, I trained over the summer as a contact tracer.
Okay.
Just so I could be of service. And I haven't actually had to do it, but I had some people in my office train as well. And they've been involved when we had a couple of those cases. They've been involved in the contact tracing part of it. I'm now the wellness coordinator at our school, which was not part of my job description pre-COVID. It's actually a part that's really been professionally stimulating for me. I've been doing a lot of it's pushed me in a different way to think about things. And it's been for staff and for students, probably mostly for staff first, because they were the ones that were here first and worrying about their experiences and how to help them out. And then now it's kind of bled more into students over the last little while. Even though we haven't had students on campus, I've been able to open our facilities for community use, community being our specific community, our students, our parents, their families, and our staff. And so I've had to put together all the protocols in terms of, what's safe, what's not safe, how it's going to happen, and all that kind of stuff. So that's been a big part of it. Fit in with the wellness piece, but it's been really the big piece that my office has been working on a lot.
So like they can come to school and use the fitness room or something like that?
So the fitness room we didn't open because we still don't have, we don't agree on what's safe with that yet. So we're only opening outdoor spaces. So I've cordoned off the field. It has 4 activity spaces with small soccer goals on them. And then every second lane on the track is allowed to be opened. People bring their own equipment. We won't give them any equipment right now. Every second lane in the pool is open. And so if you want to use it for a family, the family has to stay in one lane. So each lane, every space is household members only. There's no mixing between household members. Okay. And then just recently we have a rooftop court, and we've opened that up for, there's 4 basketball hoops on there. So we divided it into 4 sections. We have some pop-up badminton nets there if families want to use that. And then there's a tennis court that is across the whole thing. So they can book that out as well.
That goes through your office or?
Yeah, so the booking and everything comes through my office. The rules come through my office. The publicizing comes through my office. That's another thing I've picked up skill. I'm now very adept at making videos to announce things because I can't announce them in front of the school like I used to. I got to give a shout out to Joe Toller from Uganda. I've been emailing him back and forth about how to make my videos look better. He's been awesome.
That's definitely something positive to come out of this, right? It's not just an email anymore explaining a whole bunch of text. Make a video.
Yeah, and I think it's a more efficient way. I think those are the things. There's things that we've learned, not just us in athletics and activities, but teachers in general, that are going to change teaching down the road. It's not going to go back to the way it was. We're going to take what was good and we're going to use it in the next round whenever we do come back face to face. And that's one of the things that's going to be for me.
Yeah, I started using iMovie a little more often and got used to that. And I never thought I could. And before I knew it, that's how I was making my announcements and the award videos as well. So the other thing is I still got to figure out how to turn my phone so that
landscape. Yeah.
And I guess the connection is better if you do it that way.
Well, that's good that you brought that up, and I didn't have to bring it up, Matt. I appreciate that. Landscape.
Really noted.
Yeah. One totally non-athletic, but along the same lines is last night I was a parent in middle school parent-teacher conferences and online. Even though we are back in person and can have guests on campus and everything, it was just, to have all the parents there moving around. So it was done virtually, and it was awesome. Sat on my, kitchen table with my wife. Every 6 minutes, boom, we had another teacher flying through. It was efficient. No idle chit chat. Down to business. Next. And I hope we do them virtually from now on. I mean, it was just, faster. I'm at home. I didn't have to drive to school. At night it was great. So
it'd be interesting to get the data when it comes out, like, are the participation rates higher than what they would have been when you guys did them face to face? How did the teachers feel? How was it for them?
Right.
Because I know we did that here, but the teachers were on, like, it seemed like way too longer than they would have normally been.
Okay.
And I don't know how that worked out. I wasn't involved in that. And so, but I think there's things that, like, I was thinking about that with, like, switching it back to athletics. I have poor to dismal turnout for parent meetings for athletics. Yeah. What if I did those virtually?
Just do them. Yeah.
Like, probably increase the participation rate immensely.
Yep. No, we did that in the fall, even right at the start of the year. We did it 7:00 at night, one night, and had a ton of parents on. They didn't have to leave their house. They didn't have to come in. We had returners that might have never have come. Well, my kids played for years, so they wouldn't have come in. But because it was online and they could be sitting on their couch, they were there. So, yeah, we'll definitely continue that. It was great. It was great.
Probably also it's a very unique time. They probably wanted to be there because this year wasn't going to be like any other year.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They were there to ask questions and how's this going to be and how's that going to be, and yeah, it was great. But let's take a quick ad break and we'll come right back with some more stuff.
Coach Evaluator is the premier coach evaluation software for schools and athletic organizations and preferred coach evaluation solution of the NIAAA and the Positive Coaching Alliance. The system is completely customizable with an always growing evaluation template library for athletic directors to reference. There are not only evaluations for ADs to use, but also self-evaluations and parent-player evaluations of coaches. Learn more about digitizing and simplifying your coach evaluation process by visiting www.coachevaluator.com. Mention Globetrottin ADs to receive a $200 discount on the yearly rate.
Kukri are a global multi-sport clothing brand specializing in providing the world's most prestigious schools with bespoke made and designed team uniforms for students of all standards and abilities. If you are frustrated by inconsistent colors, branding, costs, and sizing across your school's uniforms, then it's time to discuss an offering where every sport is available from softball to soccer for male and female athletes at rates to suit your budget. To find out how Kukri could elevate the apparel of your student athletes to a professional level, email the team at contact@kukrisports.com. A dedicated sales manager will offer you a quote today. Mention this ad and receive a special offer on your coach or PE staff order. Okay, we're back, and Mike, our schools in Europe, we still have virtual competitions. We may be practicing, some people may be competing, but we're not traveling. So we've been doing virtual cross country. I'm going to host a virtual speech and debate competition coming up in too soon, month. But our kids are in class. They're not on the screens all day. What are you guys doing there? And what's it been like for your kids that are on a device all day to then maybe do something extra, some kind of virtual competition?
Yeah, that's been, that's the hardest. We talk about that all the time. Like as athletic and activity directors, the one thing we don't want is our kids on screens. Yeah. And we've always been, It's always been the bane of our existence. And now we're basically, a lot of it is just trying to figure out how to use the screens as a tool, not as the end goal, right? So I just pushed out a virtual ASA program. I held off as long as I could, hoping we'd get back to school. Yep. And for two reasons. Number one, teaching virtually is hard, and all of our ASA leaders are teachers. And to ask them to take on an ASA is too big of an ask, really, honestly. Yep. And then the second thing was I was hoping to get kids off screens with the program more than on, and trying to figure out how to do that. But eventually, once we realized that we're not getting back this semester, the other point is the kids need to connect, and you hear that so much. And we find like most of the things we're noticing are that the kids are withdrawing into just their classes virtually and not connecting with their peers or outside their peer group. So we wanted to create a situation where they'd at least get to connect around something that wasn't forced on them. So our ASA program we pushed out, the idea was just to create some areas that might be passion areas for kids, with the caveat to the leaders that in any way you can make it so that it's a jumping off point for them to do something away from the screen, or even just on the screen but together themselves somewhere else, not listening to you deliver something. That would be the preferred model that we'd put forward.
Right.
And then the same kind of thing has been talked about at the conference level as well, how to do that at the conference level. So the biggest kind of at the conference level is a crazy one. So esports has come up, and India has piloted it amongst their schools, and it's been really popular for them. So they brought it to the SAISA group, and we're all like, I'm not sure. I don't know if I really want to do this. And I thought about it more and more, and I was like, you know what? Because when we were back in Canada over the break, my son would get up at and my son's a 3-sport athlete. He's not gamer's not his number one thing. But at the cabin in Canada, he'd get up at 2 a.m. to go play League of Legends. And he wasn't playing it because he wanted to become the best League of Legends player. He was playing it because his buddy in Korea was up and playing, his buddy in Bangladesh was up and playing, and it was a way for them to be connected. But not, they couldn't just get up and talk to each other. They had to have something to be doing around it to work it out. So,
like
so
poker.
because of that, I was
like
yeah,
like poker for us.
Was he able to do it quietly though?
It was funny because he had to do it downstairs because it was the best internet connection. And he told me he got really freaked out because we have huge glass windows and we're all upstairs sleeping and he's downstairs in the dead of night and way up north in Saskatchewan. He said it got pretty freaky sometimes when he thought about it because he can't see out, right? When your lights are on, you can't see anything that's happening outside and they can see you inside. But the funny piece is, so I put it on the ASA sign-up sheet. I had kids sign up. I didn't have a leader. And nobody jumped on board to be a leader. So now I'm running the esports club. I know nothing about it. It's going to be a student-led club, absolutely. But I'm figuring it out as I go. Dylan couldn't take it. My son couldn't take it because he's an IB and he just doesn't have the time to do that. But he said he'll help me out every once in a while if I need it. So, so that's one that was kind of, some of our schools in the SAISA region elected not to join the esports one because they didn't want their kids doing more. Yeah. In Bombay, they did a really good job of pushing it out as a team, not as a gaming club.
Yep.
So that's how they kind of got people on board amongst, we're only going to play for this time. We're not going to have you do, we're going to be leaders. You're going to show people how to be responsible with technology. Like that whole bit was brought into it. So I like the way it was put out, and that's why I decided to jump on board with it.
Do you think that's something that'll continue then once you get back?
I think, to be honest, I think if we have a plan to start having like interconference games in January, maybe leading to a tournament sometime in the spring. And my son just asked me that tonight. He's like, do you think this is going to be another? Yeah. And I think we just backdoored another SAISA event into our program. The question will be, do we make it a traveling event? Yeah. Do we have them travel to one place? And as my son tells me, that's actually a big deal because with something called pings, when you play a game that has a high speed, if you are in one country and your connection's not as good in the other country, then you're at a disadvantage. So it would be worthwhile to bring them together into one place and have it happen like that. So definitely think that'll happen. Another thing we're trying to put together, I think, which is an interesting thing I haven't heard a lot of people talk about, is we have a lot of service learning groups on campus. We're all in developing countries, so even more so than most normal schools, there's really a lot that can be done. And so we're going to try and bring the leaders of those groups together for kind of like a roundtable and let them talk about how they do things and how we do things in Dhaka compared to how they do things in Bombay, what we can learn from each other and that kind of stuff. So doing that virtually. MUN, as you guys know, they're thriving in the virtual world. I don't even, are we ever going to go back to in-person MUN things. I mean, it's going to be a hard sell, like, because it's been so successful as a virtual one. And forensics is one of our schools is going to pick up trying to put together a forensics virtual competition in the spring as well.
Cool.
Yeah, it's
So we're trying. You do what you do, right? You try everything you can to try and give them something that'll work. You guys, you were talking about your cross country meets just now and on your last pod, and I was listening to that. And we're looking at one of our schools has a really strong historical swim program and things. So we're looking at putting together a virtual swim competition, and then maybe a virtual track and field.
Oh, cool. Wow, track and field too. That's a lot. That would have a lot of moving parts, eh?
Well, especially because we're not, like, our schools are very, like, they're kind of old schools, and so the different facilities in each place, like, we'll have to drastically cut down the events because we have like 180 meter track, somebody else has a 400, somebody has a 222, and to try and figure all that kind of stuff out will be, but you just do the best you can to make it work, right?
And about the swimming, I got an email from Matt at VIS in Vietnam today about his virtual swim meet on November 14th. So pretty soon, pretty early for us, but I'll share out all that information for everybody, and that may be the first of many coming. Yeah,
we're not swimming yet, but that'd be something we'd probably be interested in later down the road. Or I'd like to see how they organize it, because
and how it all works out. The great thing, it should work, and logically, you think it could work. It's just
Well, Matt said there's let me see here. There's 25 teams already in 15 plus countries. Cool. So a lot of listeners out there maybe already signed up for it, but we'll share it out, and maybe that'll be the next virtual competition to hit the European schools after it's too cold to run.
Well, Mike, this has been great. We've got a lot of good info from you for what you guys are doing in terms of the, you're still distanced and virtual with terms of running your program, but it sounds like you guys are doing the best you can and making it still worthwhile and something that kids can get a lot out of. So that's great to hear. And we just wish you the best to keep going, keep it strong, and then hopefully you guys will be back in person as soon as you can. Hopefully here sooner than later.
Yeah. As we may be going virtual.
Yeah, we might be flipping.
We might be going back, right?
I hope not. I hope it crests for you guys and it comes back down. Because I got to tell you, it's good. Being virtual. One of the things we look to the schools that have come through it to know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It is going to change, and so you just got to do what you need to do to get through it, because you're going to get to change, go back, and if you guys do take a couple steps back, that's what you got to realize too, is that it's going to flip around again, and you'll be needed. And what you're doing is, I loved what Matt was saying last week about how all the different things that you're doing now that you wouldn't have been doing. Like it has provided new opportunities. Like there are things, when it's all said and done and we're through it, we're going to look back and think of some things that happened that were actually cool things, and that, maybe, we need to appreciate a little bit more.
Well, before we go, I know I listen to podcasts in the car when I run. Well, not run, when I'm on a bike or elliptical. But Mike, you listen to other places that you shared with before. Where's the coolest place you've listened to a podcast? Doesn't have to be our podcast.
But it is your podcast. You know this. This is a self-serving question because Nick knows the answer to this. I am very lucky to summer up in northern Saskatchewan on a lake that has a beautiful creek, which I catch jackfish on, or northern pike as they're also known. Mm-hmm. And when I'm out on that creek, the thing I listen to the most is the Globetrottin ADs podcast. Honestly, it's
the nature.
Yeah, it is. And there's a lot of talk about how, that's really important in this pandemic we're in, about getting back out in nature. And it's hard here in Dhaka. I don't get to kayak here in Dhaka. But there's something to listening to you guys on a slow moving creek with like It's crazy. I notice too many things. You know this because I send you notes about
Right,
little things that I
absolutely.
heard that I'm like, Matt's mic's not working or whatever's going on. But yeah, that's another one of the things the pandemic has done. I always knew podcasts were cool, never had time to put into them. And now I couldn't imagine not being a podcast listener. It's one of the best ways to stay connected, stay current, get information, keep your mind working forward. And I'm really, like I've told you guys, just so happy that you guys have this one together. Like it always hits, it hits something that is relevant to me. And so It's definitely one that's at the top of the playlist.
Cool. Well, thanks, Mike.
Well, thanks, buddy. We appreciate it. So you just mentioned you can't kayak, of course, in Bangladesh. Oh, maybe you can. I never been.
Well, you can, but I don't.
What are some of the cool things you can do? That you want to share about your life there in Bangladesh, or things you would do under normal circumstances that would make it a worthwhile visit to go there someday there in Dhaka. I mean, I've known folks who've worked there like you, and I've heard some things about it. I know in terms of like it being very crowded and it's a developing country, but what are some of the interesting things as an expat you've been able to do there?
I think some of the things you would, if you were coming here for like on a tourist kind of thing, or when people come to visit us that aren't working here, there's some major like ecological must-see kind of things, like the Sundarbans, which is kind of on the border between India and Bangladesh. It's one of the UNESCO's protected heritage ecological reserves or something like that, and that's where you find the Bengal tigers there. If you're lucky enough to do a tour there, you might, it's very hard to actually see them, but some people have been able to get them, see them. But it's the largest, I think it's the largest mangrove forest in the world. I think, I could be wrong, but it's huge anyway. And then down in the south, we've got a city or an area close to Chittagong. It's called Cox's Bazar, and it's 150 kilometers of beach.
Oh, cool.
They try and say that they're the longest beach in the world, but they're not. There's a longer one in Australia, but they are the second longest beach in the world. So we actually have, we just are on a 4-day weekend right now. So a flight of teachers went down there to spend the weekend down there and just kind of get back to the ocean and that kind of stuff. If you're in Dhaka proper, yeah, you're right. It's crowded, super crowded. I think we're one of the top 5 or 3 most crowded places on earth. But that doesn't mean there isn't fun, cool things to do. You get in like India, get in a rickshaw and just like drive around town is like awesome. There's a major river that flows through Dhaka called I'm not going to remember it, the Banga, something. But we all, as teachers, we have boat shares on these boats that you can take out and go up the river. And then you're basically you go from a $20-30 million city or 30 million person city to like nature. You're out on a riverboat, and there are pink dolphins in the river that I've never seen, but other people have seen, and that's a big, huge highlight. So there's things to do, but it's a developing country, so it's that kind of thing. Yeah. Teachers here, to be honest with you, like if you were talking to PE teachers and those types that are listening to this, we get out and we go Thailand, Nepal. It's an easy jumping off point to lots of the local area places. So teachers tend to book out quite a lot.
Yeah, that's cool. Seems like so foreign at the moment to be able to do something. I can't even go to Budapest right now, but sounds like a place to go for sure.
And that's one of the nice things. Like we're in the pandemic, but we can go out and take the boat out.
Yeah,
because we're doing it on our own, and everything here is like you can. We have our own like the school provides us with a vehicle, so we're kind of we can kind of stay no matter how bad it gets out there. We can stay safe and isolated and move around and that kind of stuff, which is awesome.
Very cool. All right, Mike, we'll add it to the list for where we can go when we can go. Somewhere. And thanks for being on. Thanks for being a listener and guest. And it's good to hear about that part of the world, because in many ways the same, but in many ways totally different. So it's very cool.
Yeah, and like I said, it's thanks for talking to this side of the world, and thanks for doing what you do, because I think that's what keeps us in this business together. And some of my best friends from Shanghai are now in your part of the world, and it's needed. We need, because a lot of us now can't travel. This is kind of the surrogate for that. So Good on you.
Cool. All right. We'll leave it there. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Until next week, this has been another episode of the Globetrottin ADs.